What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the What the What podcast. I am one of your hosts, Eric Creech. Joining me on the couch today, Kyle Whitley, and tuning in from the sanctum sanctorum of her choosing, Ashby Brain.
That was magical.
What's poppin'?
What's up? Which one are you going to? There's one in London, Beijing, and there's New York.
Oh, definitely London. London's one of my favorite places on the planet.
Like, I wonder who's guarding that sanctum sanctorum. I know Dr. Strange's all about the one in New York.
That's Doctor Who.
Oh, Doctor Who is
the one in London.
Oh, I've never seen Doctor Who.
I haven't either. I just assumed.
Oh, okay.
That's what I say. Doctor Who is 100% a British show, so the Doctor's British.
Does he do magic?
No. I mean, I don't want to have to explain Doctor Who to you guys, but it's like
He has a magic
it's
phone
like
booth.
asking if the people in Star Trek do magic. I'm sure in the context of the show, it's supposed to seem to the people that he's appearing to that it's magic, but he's actually just a very technologically advanced alien.
Well,
So.
okay. Well, here's something I do know. Benedict Cumberbatch was one of the Doctors.
That's
so
true.
Is this some kind of weird Marvel crossover
From a different realm.
from a different realm?
Benedict Cumberbatch has never been a doctor or in Doctor Who.
He was not one of the Doctors. Who
He
am I
was-
thinking?
No,
You're thinking.
he was Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes. Yes.
He was Sherlock Holmes. Okay. Who was the Doctor before Matt Smith?
Oh, David Tennant, who was Barty
David
Crouch
Tennant
Jr.
is
in
who
Harry
I'm thinking
Potter.
of. Yeah, David
Yeah.
Tennant, the villain in Jessica Jones.
Jessica Jones.
That's
Yes.
I get all those
Yes.
British guys mixed up.
He was also Barty Crouch Jr. in the Harry Potter
Yes, he
movies.
was. Barty
But no, Benedict
Barty
Cumberbatch
Crouch
was Sherlock Holmes, which is why it was funny that he ended up in Marvel too, because of course Robert Downey Jr. was also Sherlock Holmes.
Well, and
So,
also their Watsons, Martin Freeman and Jude Law, have also appeared
Both.
in the MCU as well.
You also
That's
know
right.
who another
That's
Sherlock
right.
Holmes was?
Who?
Henry Cavill, who's Superman in the DC universe.
Oh, we're not talking about
we're
Superman.
not talking about that.
Why not?
We're not talking
Why
about that, Kyle.
I think we should.
Just were like, shut it down.
Shut
No.
it down now.
He did
this
a good
is
Sherlock
This is a Marvel discussion.
No.
I don't care that the Snyder Cut came out this weekend. We're talking MCU
Look,
on today's
look.
podcast, and we want to thank the listeners for tuning in. We're not
Break
talking
it up
about
there. No, the world's talking about this movie, so we might as well
Look,
talk
if
about
I
it.
can talk about Bucky Barnes ad nauseum, we can let Kyle talk about the Snyder Cut.
I disagree.
You're wrong. You haven't even watched it. You don't even know.
That's why we shouldn't talk about it. Don't spoil anything for me.
I'm not going to spoil it. I will throw it out there this much. I told him before we started the podcast I would put my input on it. I haven't finished it yet. I'm watching it in sections, which they did a really cool job of breaking it down with literally like title screens to say part 5 with a title, and then you can just stop it and watch it almost as a TV series, which I'm really enjoying. I've come to the conclusion that the DC universe would make a much better like television style where you just get all the information you need without them having to rush it into one movie. Because if I was having to watch this 4-hour movie all together, I probably would zone out multiple times. But the way they did it this way, it's a lot more, you find out a lot more information. You understand why things are happening compared to whenever you saw Justice League before. It was literally like all the trailers combined and thrown into one and just scene until the movie's over. So people are going to like it. Some people are still not going to like it. I've enjoyed it a lot more so far, and I was one that didn't really care for it the first time. So even though I am a big DC person, I will definitely admit their movies have not been great.
You know, what's interesting about that is, what's funny about it is I completely agree with you. And what's interesting about it is, for all the mess I talk about DC and the movies and, Zack Snyder or whatever, my brain compartmentalizes that completely separately from the DC CW universe that I am 100% into and watch every episode. Like, I have seen every episode of Arrow, Flash, Legends, Supergirl, Superman and Lois. I mean, like, I've watched the one-off they did of Swamp Thing this summer. I mean, when it comes to DC in the TV medium, I'm a huge fan. And so I feel like I can't be the only one that finds their cinematic ventures problematic. Not
Sure.
like problematic in that sense, but like it just doesn't work for me. And I wish that like DC could understand what they're letting Greg Berlanti do in the TV medium and then see what Marvel's currently doing and somehow put the dots together that
Mm-hmm.
that could work for them. And I'm hoping that maybe the reaction to the Snyder Cut will be like an awakening for them,
Yeah,
because I
definitely.
do think that if DC, I mean, I say if DC got into TV like they're not already in TV, but like the DC that puts out these movies is not the DC that is behind the CW Arrowverse.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it happens to all be DC backstory. So I feel like if they can make moves towards trying to make all that merge together. Because the other thing that I think that Marvel has learned that DC still hasn't learned is that the same characters that you see on your TV can be the same characters that you see on your movie screen and vice versa. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, the idea that you don't have to recast to move something from the movie screen to the TV screen. So, like, one of the really interesting things they did during Crisis, when they did all the crossovers of all the
Mm-hmm.
Arrowverse TV shows, is they brought,
Ezra
oh,
Miller.
Ezra
what's his
Miller.
name? Ezra Miller
Yeah.
in for just a hot second as like the Flash, as an
Mm-hmm.
alternate universe Flash. But I think, and I'm not a TV exec thinking about losing billions of dollars, but I think that Grant Gustin as Barry Allen could carry a Flash franchise on
Oh,
the big screen.
absolutely. Yes.
Stephen Amell could have been the Arrow in the DC Zack Snyder universe. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't understand why they have this barrier in DC again. Like, there seems to be a big curtain between what they're doing for the big screen and what they're doing for the small screen. And I just think that they could really stand to like rethink that whole concept.
I don't disagree with you there. I was also a big fan of Arrow. I didn't really watch everything Flash or Legends of Tomorrow, but was a big Arrow fan, and I watched all the crossovers and stuff, and just liked how everything with that flowed really well. I think the storytelling's better, and I think that's where you have to kind of like measure like storytelling versus what's going to make the most profit,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
and I think what y'all were talking about is for the DC or the Justice League type thing. There's so many backstories and so many different things. It would serve the storytelling better to be in a television format. But
Right.
unfortunately, there's probably less money to be made that way. But I don't know that now because Disney Plus is putting some of their bigger characters, maybe not their biggest, but I mean, they're crowning a new Captain America in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I would say that's one of their bigger characters now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
Right.
it's not Steve Rogers, but, it is what it is. I've made the argument over the years that the X-Men would be well served to be in a television episodic format because there's so many characters in the X-Men, in the main team or the lore that comes with X-Men. You would be better off doing 10-episode seasons and have overarching stories each season, and then they can still tie into the MCU. But trying to get all that across in a 2-hour movie, I feel does not serve them the best that it could be.
Right.
They've had some good X-Men movies, but they've also had some bad ones that would have really had been better served to have extra time, so they wouldn't feel like they're
Right.
jamming everything into a 2.5-hour movie.
And
Well,
I'll,
and I think that the good news is that the format is changing, and the format changing helps everything and everyone, because I feel like where the pushback was historically is that movie actors refuse to be on TV and movie
Mhm.
directors refuse to direct TV because directing and acting in TV shows was the lesser medium. Like, you were doing TV to get out of TV to get into
Mhm.
movies and to never go back. But now the format is so switched that you could have directors like Zack Snyder, and you could have actors, like um Gal Gadot and
Ben Affleck.
Ezra Miller willing to do the TV format because they understand that I mean that now that's where the money is. That's where the production value is. Especially after 2020 when no one went to the movies for a year and like somehow Hollywood survived.
Well, just to wrap it up a little bit about DC, but I will say I was the same way. Like Flash is my favorite CW DC series, and I love Grant Gustin. I think he does an amazing job, and I really like him as the Flash. And I remember when it was brought up, like I like Ezra Miller and some of the other things I'd seen, but I was like, I don't know how this is going to work out as the Flash because that's two different type of people. You've already got an amazing Flash. Why don't you put him in? The whole world said that. And I will say, like, whenever I left that movie, I was like, man, he was just so dorky and, like, he was not the Barry Allen that I'm used to, and there just wasn't much there. I will say, seeing it now, at least the parts that I have seen, I'm near the end. I'm at, like, the epilogue part before I left the house. But the way they've done this movie this time is they finally give you the backstory for all these people that they're bringing together. Whereas we've talked about it before, how DC did it backwards, where Marvel went with these individual characters. You had plenty of time to get to know them before you threw them in a movie with everybody else. DC tried to jump the gun and do Justice League and just throw everybody in there, assuming you would know everybody, and you do for the most part, at least the main three. But then all these other characters were very much really quick scenes. I'm grabbing you up to join a team. I don't really care to know anything else about you. You've got powers. We need you. Come on. Versus the way they've done it this time, like honestly, and like I said, I've only seen Justice League one time beforehand, and it was in the movie theater, and I do think I like dozed off in the midst of it, but I didn't remember hardly anything about Cyborg, or at least any backstory of Cyborg. I remember him just being who he is and knowing what I knew before I went in, and him having some powers. I remember the Flash having some funny like scenes that were a little quirky, but then honestly, he ran around a whole lot and shot lightning and did things. But I didn't really care about either one of them. And I like the characters. Same way with Aquaman. You got, a little bit of where he's from, but that's about it. But going back and seeing this version now, it didn't have any reason. It could be as long as it wanted to be because the fans demanded it long enough that they could just do what it wanted to do with it. It would never fly, I don't think, if you would have put a 4-hour movie out in movie theaters. I don't think people would have originally gone to see it so much. But there was so much already recorded and so much back history that each of these characters, by the time you reach the ending and the fighting and everything else, you have so much more appreciation for each of the heroes, their lives in general, beyond just joining up to be part of a super team, but just the lives they live. Cyborg has such a deep history, or like just his life. He's got a really great story around him that I didn't appreciate enough because I didn't have any of the information about it. Barry Allen, the same way. Right. You get more of that, and even when Ezra Miller has his dorky moments and quirky moments, like, you appreciate them at these moments now because you've learned more about him instead of just being thrown these little moments. The same with the villain, you appreciate it a lot more. I did, at least this time, because I had more of a history of this villain and not just some big thing. And then I will say, too, I thought about when I was watching, I'm always the guy that's like, they keep throwing all this CGI stuff in here, and it's just way too much CGI. There's tons of it in this movie, but I think at least this version was done well. There are plenty of scenes the same way. We've talked about some other stuff where it just jumps reality and it's just full-blown CGI the entire time, but it looked better. I didn't get taken away. The actual villains looked like they were there fighting them and stuff this time. But
well, you've convinced me to watch it, and that's the highest praise I can give.
You may hate it. Like, I'm not saying, because I've seen online, like, I've mentioned it before, I try my best now not to jump online and read ahead and jump ahead and everything else. I've seen some, like, not giant reviews, just people leaving comments on stuff like on Instagram or whatever. And you've got some people that are like, this is amazing. They should allow him to do the second one now. There should be a second one because it leaves it open and there's so much more to it now. There's tons of that. And then right there beside of it, there's obviously people that like, that sucked. It was a waste of my time. Or I saw the first one and hated it. Why would I ever watch this one? I mean, everybody's going to have their opinions and you're totally entitled to that. I definitely, like I said, I haven't quite finished it yet, but I've enjoyed this one a lot more. But I have also as well watched it more so as the way I would a TV show versus the other. And like to your point too, and I'll be quiet, but you're talking about TV shows and the formats and stuff that we're, actors and actresses jumping into now. And you got to look how Disney doing Disney Plus is giant, compared to previous, years past TV. companies or whatever. Same way where DC's, teamed up now with HBO. Now HBO is bigger and they can do more things. And I know they've talked about doing a miniseries with like Ben Affleck as Batman. I haven't dug into any of that, so that could all be fake. I could be telling you fake stuff right now. But I do remember at least seeing an article at one point. There's the possibility. I do feel like you're going to see, from this reaction, at least people wanting to see more, at least intrigued to see more. Now, where they go with that, I don't know, because there's already, another Batman movie that's in progress that we've already seen a trailer for. And I know that's in a different world, the same way they did Joker and did it in its own, entity and everything else. Who knows what they're going to do going forward, but I definitely appreciated this movie a lot more than I did the first time I saw it. And I'll be quiet now.
Can we get back to Marvel, please?
Maybe.
Every action has its opposite. Okay, sorry.
That's the wrong movie. That's not Marvel either.
It's on Disney Plus.
Disney owns it too, so who knows?
Look, is it an episode if someone doesn't bring up Hamilton?
I want to know
really
this.
Not. Well, and here's the one thing. Like, if we're going to talk about HBO Max, let's talk about the real MVP of HBO Max, In the Heights, which is coming out in June, by the way.
Right.
Can't wait.
Yeah, now that I've told you about it.
Yeah, thank you.
Question, is Peggy a Disney princess?
She should be. She's wearing
Yes.
Belle's dress. I mean, why not?
That's true. It's a hand-me-down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or is it?
Well, that's true. Well, I don't know.
When did Beauty and the Beast take place?
They didn't have television.
French Revolution?
I don't know. I just enjoy
I think
movies for what
Peggy
they
would have
are.
handed it down to Belle, honestly.
Maybe she
If
did.
that's the timeline.
Yeah, I
It's
can't.
possible.
I totally forgot the timeline of Beauty and the Beast.
Things you didn't think you'd have to think of tonight, but alas, here we are.
Honestly.
I'm not thinking.
Honestly.
I just enjoy the cartoons and the other movies, and I'll let you handle the historical facts of it.
Cool. Anything else you want to talk about before we dive into the episode while we're here?
Nope.
No reactions to Falcon and the Winter Soldier real quick? Ashby?
Here's the thing. I can't get started. Or I will never finish. And I know that we have many MCU episodes to get through before we can deep dive into Falcon Winter Soldier. And I feel like if you ask me every week for the next 6 weeks what I thought of the episode, there's not enough bandwidth, honestly. Like I just can't. I can't even.
You're saying the limit does not exist.
That limit does not exist.
Okay.
I got up at 6:30. I didn't set my alarm for 3 a.m., but I got up early Friday morning to watch the entire episode with my coffee before work, and like was blown away, shouted, like, pumped my fist in the air, cried, texted a bunch of people, like posted, on social, trying not to, do any spoilers. And I just, I was so concerned. I was so concerned about, Marvel taking the long format with TV show. I'd watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like I knew they were capable of it, but it's one of those things where everyone has that character that they root for, and everyone knows that Bucky Barnes is it for me. And so I know a lot of people who love Wanda, for example, were worried about WandaVision, and WandaVision ended up being delightful. And so it sort of just, I was really worried because it gave me even higher hopes. And I know we're only one episode in, but I am blown away, and I'm already so happy with how they're treating these characters, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited for this TV show.
Same way with, I mentioned before, like I've tried not to watch every little thing leading up to it. So I came into it very vaguely knowing like what we knew from Endgame and everything else, and kind of knowing where it was heading from there. But it was really cool. Like it took me by surprise at least how the first episode was handled. Same way I'm not going to go in like a deep, information about it. But the way, just where every person is positioned currently and just how things are working, it put a brand new spin that I was not expecting at all, coming into what, just seeing trailers or whatever else coming up to it. I just expected something different. But I like this better than what I was expecting.
I'll just say this. No, you can't get Captain America. We have Captain America at home.
That's right.
All right.
I will say, the only line I'll say was Erica looked at me and said, that's not him. Look at his chin. And I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. We'll leave it there.
Yes. Well, thanks,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, for joining us as we talk about all things DC and Marvel. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever it is you get your podcasts. And, of course, rate and review us 5 stars, okay? Or we'll send you to the mirror dimension. Have fun with that. Please follow us on social media channels by searching for What the What Media.
All one word.
All one word.
Yep, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We're also on Twitter at WTW_media. Please share this with your friends. Last week on the podcast, Kyle and I discussed 90s sports celebrities. We had a good time with that.
We did.
Really laid back episodes as Kyle is
I literally just
laying
readjusted
back
myself.
on my couch here.
Well, I just thought somehow,
Literally.
Falcon Winter Soldier made me think about, being on a couch.
No spoilers.
No.
On today's episode, we are taking a deep dive. You need to hold your mic to your mouth into 2016's Doctor Strange. Here's your spoiler warning for today's episode. While Doctor Strange is our primary focus, we may be discussing any and all things related to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, including Marvel television shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter, tie-in comics, any of the other 22 MCU films, and possibly even the DC universe too, because why not?
Yep, might as well.
So with all that said, let's jump into the New York version of the Sanctum Sanctorum and Ashby. Please recap this movie.
I feel like it's been a while since I've done a recap.
It's
this
strange.
recap is brought to you by IMDb. I'm gonna base this loosely off of their synopsis just to give me a guideline. I did watch the movie recently. I remember it being very good, and it's still very good. So I'm just gonna use this to help me make sure I don't skip anything. So we start the movie with a sorcerer and his gang, who we later come to know as Caecilius, breaks into what we also come to know as one of the Sanctum Sanctorum's libraries, and he ends up beheading the librarian, yikes, and tearing some pages out of a book. And then they try to escape, but they're followed by the Ancient One, and they end up bending and folding and reshaping reality and the streets and the buildings, and there's a lot of really cool CGI, and there's sort of a fight, and then Caecilius escapes with some of his henchmen, and then we cut to Dr. Stephen Strange, who is performing a very delicate brain operation. And as he finishes, another doctor named Christine Palmer rushes in to show him an X-ray of a patient with a bullet in the brain, and he ends up doing his, very haughty doctor act, and he saves him, and he makes one of the other doctors look foolish in the meantime. And then he and Christine have some banter, and you can tell that there is sort of a relationship, there that's a little undefined, but they're clearly sort of on again, off again lovers. And he invites her to an event that he's going to later that night, and she declines, and he goes off and gets really expensively dressed in his expensive condo and gets in his expensive car and rides off into the expensive sunset, and then promptly crashes his super expensive Lamborghini. While he crashes, we watch as the dashboard wraps basically around his hands, and then he plunges into the river, and
Don't text
he
and
is
drive, ladies and
managed.
gentlemen.
That's right, exactly. And he is saved, so he's airlifted to the hospital that he actually works at, and he awakens very badly hurt but alive, and is immobilized, especially his hands and arms. He comes to realize later were very badly damaged in the crash, and while they try to give him as much function as possible, it's very clear that after a lot of surgeries and a lot of therapies and a lot of things he's trying, that he is never going to work again. He's never going to be a surgeon again. His hands are just not going to work that way. And he refuses to accept reality. And in doing so, he basically bankrupts himself into trying to fix his hands. And he pushes Christine away. He's very rude to her. And when everything else fails, he eventually tracks down this guy that was paralyzed and was able to walk again. And this guy basically tells him that, he went to this sort of Eastern medicine place to decide that, if he couldn't get his body in order, that he would get his mind and his spirit in order. And so he went looking for spirituality and ended up finding this place that sort of basically taught him to walk again. It's all very like vaguely talked about to Strange. So off he goes to parts unknown to try to find these people who he thinks are going to somehow like illegally medically treat him with some like weird kind of fringe medicine so that he can have his hands back. And it turns out that he stumbles onto the Ancient One and her cohorts in the which Sanctum Sanctorum are they in?
It would be
Shanghai?
the
No,
Beijing.
Mm-hmm.
Beijing. So he ends up in Beijing, and they and well, he ends up being robbed on the street, but he ends up being in the place that he needs to be because one of the Ancient One's people, like uh, what's that guy's name? I can't remember.
Mordo?
Mordo.
Yeah, Mordo.
Mordo. Saves him from the muggers, and then takes him into the Comertage, where he finally meets the Ancient One. And he's still under the impression that there's going to be some weird medical practices going on. And she basically tells him that, she's a mystical, mystic kind of guide person who can align the body and bend reality to make things, bend to her will. And so, she's not going to do anything medical to him. She's just going to teach him spiritually to like align his chakras, and basically he will be able to control his hands from shaking. And he basically says, like, this is BS. That's not possible. This is all like woo woo magic stuff. And she forces his spirit outside of his body, and he has an out of body experience. And then he falls to the ground, and he's like, teach me, and basically she thinks he's not a true believer, so she kicks him out, and he sits on the doorstep and knocks for 5 hours until they let him back in. And that's when he ends up being a student of the Ancient One and living at Comertage. And he does his typical Dr. Stephen Strange thing where he thinks he knows better and he breaks all the rules, and he ends up stealing books out of the library. And he goes through a lot of things with like learning how to bend reality, and he learns about the mirrorverse. And while he's doing all of this, he's starting to gather that there are other things going on, like that Caecilius, who we saw at the beginning, used to be a student just like him of the Ancient One, and then disagreed with her about using darker magic and darker practices. And then he's trying to bring about basically the end of the world by inviting this alternate universe destroyer of worlds called
Dormammu.
Yeah.
Dormammu. Thank you. Called
had a hard time
Dormammu.
remembering.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain. Oh wait, that's not. We're not here there.
We're not there yet.
That's right.
Rewind.
Into our world to basically like eat it, basically.
Mhm.
But Caecilius is convinced that like it's going to lead to immortality. So anyway, long story short, the Caecilius's gang breaks into all the sanctums at once, basically looking for the spell that will bring Dormammu into our world. And they end up killing a bunch of people, and then Doctor Strange defeats them temporarily at the New York sanctum, and then the Ancient One and Mordu show up, and the Ancient One confronts Stephen about not being ready to be a part of this world, and he's just in it to fix his hands, and he's not in it to save the world. And he's he has to make a choice about being selfish or not. And then there's a fight in the hospital where they're like all having out of body experiences, and then the Ancient One is killed. And Stephen has to make a decision about whether or not, and Christine is involved in all this. And there's some really funny scenes in the hospital where, he's scaring the mess out of her by appearing to her in his like temporal form or whatever. And he basically has to decide whether he's going to use everything he's learned to be the selfish person he always has been and fix his own hands, or whether he's going to take on this mantle of being the master of a sanctum and the protector of this world and all that kind of stuff. And he ends up deciding that he's going to help Mordu and everyone else, and Wong, who's one of the other characters, he's the librarian, defeat Caecilius and defeat Dormammu. And so they have this final stand at one of the last sanctums in Hong Kong. And they get there, and Caecilius has already called Dormammu into our world, and everything's starting to happen. And Stephen uses the Infinity Stone that we don't know is an Infinity Stone yet. He uses the Time Stone to rewind time.
The Eye of
and
Agamotto.
That's right, the Eye of Agamotto, which that's what they think it is, right? Or that's what he thinks it is. He doesn't realize what it is at first, and so he uses it because he apparently has a natural aptitude for magic. Because Mordo asked him, like, "How did you know to do that?" And he uses it to mess with time and defeat Caecilius, and then he ends up getting into a temporal time loop with Dormammu, getting killed over and over and over and over again.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
Right.
Now I'm ready.
And he just says it over and over again. And Dormammu is basically like, we can do this forever. Like, I can kill you forever and ever. And then Strange says, right, but that makes you my prisoner, because we will never leave this time loop. Like, I will lose every time, but you will never win. And so it makes Dormammu mad, obviously, because he realizes he is trapped. And so they bargain, and Doctor Strange defeats Dormammu by making him promise to leave Earth alone and take Caecilius and his henchmen with him. And the movie ends with him becoming the head honcho, the master, the protector, whatever, of the New York Sanctum, along with Wong. So, and he gets a cool little cape in the meantime that has a mind of its own. So, anyway, that's where we are.
Good job.
Well, yeah, that was a pretty good job. Well, there was a post-credit scene too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was it, Eric?
I mean, didn't a certain Asgardian show up?
It's possible.
Yes. Sorry, the post-credit scene. Yes. I was a little confused by the post-credit scene, because I guess at the time I wouldn't have known this, but a lot of the post-credit scenes are scenes in and of themselves, but in this instance, the post-credit scene was a scene that was actually put into the Thor Ragnarok movie, which we didn't know at the time.
Yes.
So we're actually getting a snippet of Thor Ragnarok as the post-credit scene to Doctor Strange, where Doctor Strange comes up against Thor and Loki and kindly asks them to leave Earth alone.
As he refills Thor's beer over and over and over again. And that's not the first time that it's happened. They actually did that in Ant-Man, I believe, as well.
Okay.
Where they Captain America has Bucky chained to like a radiator or something, and Falcon comes in and says, "I know a guy who can help us." And that same scene was in Civil War as well.
Okay.
So it's similar, but not quite the same.
I just know they didn't do that very often. Normally, the end credit scenes were standalone.
Yeah, a little teaser. Yeah. There was also another post credit scene with Mordo going to Jonathan Pagong, or whatever his name was, who used magic to heal himself, and then he never helped with the magic stuff, and Mordo literally took his magic away from him and said the world has...
Oh, wow. Pangborn?
Pangborn, that's his name. Yeah, Pangborn. Mm-hmm. And Mordo said this world has too many sorcerers. So Mordo's being positioned as a villain in a future Doctor Strange movie.
That's upsetting.
Yes.
Look, people with rigid belief systems, I mean, that can go either way. You think you're a good guy, you end up being a bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, just ask Caecilius. So.
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
A key way to know you're a bad guy is to listen to the background music that's playing whenever you're during your moments.
Ooh, good point. Good point.
That usually will reveal which way it is.
Cool.
So you're saying that the ominous symphony following me around is trying to tell me something?
Yes.
You take what you want to from that. I'm just
listen to see if they're in the major or minor scale. It'll let you know.
Yes.
Okay.
If it starts sounding like Jaws, if it sounds happy, then it's probably good. If it sounds like Jaws is about to come up, you're probably up to some no good.
Okay.
So you mentioned his cape, and then maybe it keeps reminding me of the magic carpet from Aladdin.
Pretty much.
That's what I relate it to. Where you don't really hear it talk, he doesn't do anything, but it has a very funny personality amongst itself. That's some pointless information for me, Kyle Whitley.
The cape slaps Tony Stark's hand in Infinity War. It's pretty hilarious. So, yes, very trusted.
It's a whole new world.
Trusted sidekick there. Well, Doctor Strange is the 14th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, directed by Scott Derrickson, who saw Inception and was like, I can do better. And, Scott Derrickson directed this movie. It stars, as we mentioned, Benedict Cumberbatch, who was not on Doctor Who, as well as Rachel McAdams, Benedict Wong, Benjamin Bratt, Mads Mikkelsen, Tilda Swinton, and I cannot pronounce the guy who played Mordo's name. I'm not even going to try to butcher it. Just look it up. And I will promise to get better pronunciation next time. It came out, originally had its world premiere in Hong Kong on October 13th, 2016, released in the United States on November 4th as part of Phase 3, grossed over $677 million worldwide, was met with praise for visuals, musical score, and cast, and received an Academy Award nomination for Best Visual Effects. And a sequel is scheduled to come out on March 25th, 2022, so around a year from now. We should be getting Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. With all that said, how did y'all enjoy this film? Did you like it? Hate it? Meh? Somebody talk here, please.
I feel like one day you're going to make me sit down and actually rank my MCU movies.
Oh,
so
that's
that
the end game.
definitive answers.
That's the end game.
Oh, okay. I like it.
Yeah, when we get done, when we finally get caught up in 2024 with all the Marvel stuff, we will rank.
We're gonna have to rank them.
We'll rank everything. That'll be our 5-year anniversary show. I mean,
I feel like you have to put in my mind what ends up screwing up my rankings is I categorize the Marvel Cinematic Universe into tiers. So there are tier 1 movies, and tier 1 movies are like the Captain Americas, the Thors, the Iron Mans, the Guardians. Like those are the headliner movies. And then the tier 2 movies for me are, like the Ant-Mans, the Doctor Stranges, the Captain Marvels, like the one-offs, or the ones that are meant to be like fillers that aren't like the holy trinity of Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, whatever, and aren't the tag team movies, but that certainly move the plot along. And so to me, if you think about tier 2 movies, then Doctor Strange really ranks up at the top for me. But if we're including all the Marvel movies with all of sort of those like big ones, then I mean he's probably going to end up somewhere around like 15, 16, 17, so I feel like when I rank Doctor Strange, it can seem like I don't like him, but I really, really love this movie, and I remember really loving it when it came out.
I agree with exactly what you're saying. I was thinking about it the whole time I was watching, and it keeps resonating with me now. As if you were to ask the majority of people that like Marvel movies, I don't feel like the first character the most time they're going to list is like, oh, I'm a huge Doctor Strange fan. And I don't mean that negative, because I know there are people out there that are giant Doctor Strange fans. The same way that, Ashby loves Bucky and I like Nightwing. And, it's the random characters that have a good part and they're very important, but it's not the people you necessarily think of first. Now, I'm sure the comic-wise is a little bit different. I knew Doctor Strange some from like different comic books I read over time. Never like an individual Doctor Strange book, with just ones that are bigger events that he's part of. And I always knew he was super powerful. I always knew he was someone that was considered very intelligent. But honestly, I didn't know much more than that about him. So it was really cool going in to see this movie, really getting to know him. The same way for me the first time I saw Iron Man. I knew about Iron Man, but I really didn't know like any depth, to him. So it was really cool to see that with this, and I do enjoy this movie. A lot of CGI is done in this movie, and I thought about it while watching it, and just being amazed at how it's done, where it's still, especially in New York, whenever they go into that zone where all the buildings are twisting and turning and everything else, and how it's done so meticulously that it still looks like the real world, yet it's just warped. So I don't know. I really do like this movie, but I'm right there with Ashby, where is if you ask me my top 5, it doesn't make it because there's certain ones that just I like so much that they outrank it that way. But I do think in this style of movie, I prefer this all day over Ant-Man and some of the other movies in that kind of range. But no, I really do enjoy this movie though.
For me, this movie kind of falls in the same category of like Ant-Man, the way Ashby was kind of saying. It's a good movie. I mean, I really enjoyed it when I watched it. The visuals were really striking. It was kind of like just like a refreshing movie. Like I remember whenever they announced Phase 3 and looking at the lineup and telling a friend of ours, Kyle Daltrey, like, okay, well, I'm going to watch Captain America Civil War, but I don't know if I'll go see Doctor Strange when it comes out. And that was a lie. I did not know it at the time, but I was sold hook, line, and sinker, and I was going to be there opening weekend for every Marvel movie here on out until they've disappointed me, and they have yet to disappoint me. So with all that said, it's a good movie. I enjoyed it. It's not the first one I want to rewatch. It's similar to you with your history with Doctor Strange. The only real backstory I had on Doctor Strange was his 1 or 2 episode appearance in the Spider-Man cartoon animated series, where Mordo was a bad guy in that episode. And so like I see Mordo in the movie and I'm thinking, oh, I remember him too. He's going to end up being a bad guy at some point. So that was kind of spoiled for me. Thanks, Spider-Man. But good movie. Originally, when I was ranking these movies when Endgame was coming out, I had it ranked 16th out of 21, which sounds low. But again, as we talked about with Ant-Man, just because it's low on this list does not necessarily mean it's a bad movie. And I'm looking at the list now, and I think I'm going to have to like redo this because some movies, once you rewatch them, move up. Some of them move down. I feel like Doctor Strange might move up, seeing some of the ones I have ranked ahead of it. I have Captain Marvel ranked ahead of it. I think I would rank it above Captain Marvel. So I don't know. But overall, yes, enjoyed the film. It's an important film in the MCU. It does move the plot along, and it sets him up for future appearances and sets up his role in the MCU. And the things that happen in this movie are set up really nicely, especially with the Eye of Agamotto being revealed to be the Time Stone. That's the 5th Infinity Stone that's been revealed at this point. We've seen 4 others. We know there's 6. So we know we're getting to literally an end game, no pun intended, that we're, driving ourselves to all 6 being revealed and Thanos making his move to collect them. So being able to explain where this one is, it's on Earth now, along with the Mind Stone. It's a really good movie for that. It's not like the best movie ever, but a quality film that I enjoyed. So, anything y'all want to add to that?
The only other thing I really add is just thinking more towards like Endgame, and Infinity War to see him once again and like at least showing in a powerful role. It does make you appreciate the actual character of Doctor Strange and what he's able to do. And just the way he thinks intelligently throughout things, the way he has a key moment with Tony, in game and some other moments. And I think without this great first movie to really get a good grasp of who he is, I don't think we would appreciate or necessarily even understood nearly as much in these later movies without seeing him coming from not magical at all, only straight physical, tangible, scientific belief and everything, not, magic was just fancy fairy tale stuff, to see where he ends up later on and how he fits into his niche and role within the entire other realm of heroes in this series. And
one thing I want to note, now we had the Ancient One in this movie, who was the current Sorcerer Supreme. At the end of this movie, and even into Infinity War and Endgame and into the present, Dr. Stephen Strange is not the Sorcerer Supreme yet. So, I think that's an important thing to point out. I saw a lot of stuff when WandaVision came out a couple of weeks ago. The Sorcerer Supreme was mentioned in the last episode, and some people are like, "Oh, that's Doctor Strange." She's talking about no, he's not yet the Sorcerer Supreme yet. That's an important title that he has to. I don't know how he ends up getting that title, but he's not yet obtained that title yet. There is not a current Sorcerer Supreme that we know of now. Again, since Endgame, it's been 5 years since the events of Infinity War. Maybe Mordo became the Sorcerer Supreme, and now he's. I don't know. I mean, that's something.
That's a good point.
We'll find out in Multiverse of Madness, but who knows?
I can't wait.
I cannot wait either. There's so much Marvel stuff coming out this year. I mean, I'm excited for it all. But going into next year, when hopefully we have had our fair share of Marvel stuff this year, I'm hoping I'm still excited about Multiverse of Madness come next March. What worked the best in this film?
So I can confidently say for me that Benedict Cumberbatch worked the best in this film.
Yes.
Because I didn't know a lot about Stephen Strange, like Doctor Strange, the character going into it, and so I didn't have to have really intense feelings about casting. And at this point, I feel like anyone who has issues with Marvel casting should learn from the history of Marvel casting that they rarely get it wrong. So, there's that.
I was reading something on the casting director this week. She has casted every Marvel movie except for The Incredible Hulk. And I'd say every 9.9 times out of 10, she's nailed it. So,
yes, 100%. But it was also interesting because I think we're starting to get into, we're finally in, what is this, phase 3?
Phase 3.
Phase 3. So here's the thing. It's really easy when you're doing the first Captain America and the first Iron Man and the first Thor as the casting director to cast unknowns. But Marvel into the phase 3 had gotten, I mean, they had proved themselves, right? Like they weren't here to play. People had stopped making fun of this great undertaking and had started paying attention. And so moving into phase 3, there really isn't a good way to sustainably start, like continue to use unknown actors, right? Like your catalog is growing. Everyone wants to be in a Marvel movie because now it's cool to be in a Marvel movie. When they cast Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, everyone, including Robert Downey Jr., was taking a gamble. When they cast Chris Evans as Captain America, he almost turned it down because of how much commitment he knew it was going to take. But at this point, I mean, you got actors lining up down the block that want to be in the MCU. And so she has to start really being discerning about who she's casting, knowing that for the most part, at this point, you are going to recognize the actor that they're putting in the lead role, but are they going to do it justice? Are they going to inhabit this MCU character to the extent that you forget all the other characters that they've inhabited, And so I got super excited when I heard that Benedict Cumberbatch had been cast as Stephen Strange, because I had no allegiances to the character of Stephen Strange, but I had seen Benedict Cumberbatch be Sherlock Holmes, and I was convinced of his ability to character act. And I also knew just enough about Doctor Strange, like the idea that he's supposed to be kind of selfish and standoffish, and like he's definitely not a Tony Stark type, like he's very smart. He was a doctor, then he was a magic wizard, whatever. So
you're a wizard,
and I had watched him play Sherlock Holmes, and then once I watched the movie, I realized that had only helped him, because the standoffishness and the I'm smarter than everyone around me, and the I don't care if I hurt your feelings, like all that part of like Stephen Strange, you can also see in the way that he plays Sherlock Holmes. Because to be honest, if you're playing Sherlock Holmes a certain way, you're playing him as a sociopath, basically. Like he's not a bad person, but he is a sociopath. Like he does not understand how to relate to people. And And so I really felt like it came together so nicely, and that the casting of this particular role paid off, because you also had to buy into Benedict Cumberbatch as Stephen Strange, because yes, this is a one-off movie in the sense that it's in my tier 2 kind of thing, but who were we to know that if you didn't buy into him as this character in this movie, then when he played a critical role in Infinity War and Endgame, you weren't going to buy into that either. Like, he needed to be believable as this source of knowledge. And I thought that it worked really well, and I think it was really one of the first times where I was going into an MCU movie already following an actor who was playing a lead part. And I think it worked, beautifully. But I definitely think that the more they got into the further phases, the more that they were having, um, not an easier or a harder time in casting, but just it was different challenges that were coming up. So, and I know we talk about casting a lot anyway with the MCU, but I just thought that this was a really interesting choice that I think was 50-50 lauded and booed by the internet, and I think it ended up paying off.
I think that's a very important part that you mentioned with casting, and the fact that we have so many name actors all wanting to be a part of the MCU at this point. It's making sure they are cast in the correct role or the right role. I know I've seen a lot of fanfic, a lot of calls for Keanu Reeves to be in the MCU as this character, or John Krasinski to be Reed Richards, and his wife to be Sue Richards in the Fantastic Four, and just like so many things. And it's just fan fiction's one thing, but you want to make sure. I mean, these characters that you're bringing in the movies and now in the Disney Plus shows, it's a multi-year, possibly even a decade-long commitment. And as much as we enjoy Don Cheadle and Mark Ruffalo, they are recast from the original actors, and I don't think Marvel wants to do that again.
Right.
So it's super important that they nail the role every time, because it's a role that will be in play for possibly 6 movies or 4 movies and 2 TV shows. I mean, who knows at this point? I think they did casting really well. The thing that I think worked the best, and I keep mentioning it's the visuals. It is just I made the joke earlier that director Scott Derrickson saw Inception and thought he could do better. But that's literally like when I think of the theme of each movie, where you have the political spy thriller in Winter Soldier, you have the heist movie in Ant-Man. This is the mind trippy Inception-like movie that just really messes with your mind. I mean, it's like, I've never been on LSD, but I imagine this is what it's like. Yeah, I mean, but it's beautiful to look at how the mirror dimensions and how everything just kind of, I mean, I can't even describe what I was seeing.
It's true.
The colors in the dark dimension. I mean, just there's so many, like whenever she pushes, when the Ancient One pushes Doctor Strange's like life being or essence or whatever, however it's described, and he just starts falling through all these different dimensions and realities and stuff. It's so beautifully done.
I don't know if it was this probably fits in a different section, but you reminded me of it. I don't know if it was supposed to or not, but to me, what he was floating through looked a lot like the quantum realm.
And it's possible. I mean, like that's another dimension that I wouldn't put it past them, honestly.
I watched one like review like on YouTube. It was kind of like recapping, and they talked about that a lot, and they talked about the different dimensions. And there's one particular part of it that they said is the quantum realm. You can tell in the same way you later see Ant-Man and them going through it. There's at least one part of all the different places he was going through is very much the real like quantum realm is one of the realms he went through, in addition to some other ones. I totally agree with both of you. I think the casting was a major part for this. I'll be honest, I didn't know a ton about him before seeing this movie. But seeing it, I loved it. From what I knew from the comics, he looked very much, the character. He pulled it off really well. And in the comics, there's often a little bit of back and forth between him and Tony Stark. And so you really get that as well in these movies, later on down the road. But as far as how their characters look and how they interact with each other is very, at least comic correct. And I agree with you as well, Eric. The visuals are just amazing. As the one that constantly complains about CGI, they did it, perfect in this movie to me. They do amazing job where I'm fully engulfed in this movie. I'm not left out in the middle of nowhere when all of a sudden things start going crazy. They fully draw me in. For me, I think one of the biggest parts of this movie is character development, because you start with a person similar to how you do with Tony Stark, in a different way. But he starts out as a doctor that is very caught up in himself, very caught up in his accomplishments and what he has done. But you do see a little bit of a difference between, how Tony Stark is very so much about himself. You see that he is concerned that this person's not dead. No, we should fix that and make, and save his life. But there is that part of it to say, I'm the one that's going to save his life type deal, And he grows the same way. He has his wreck. His hands are destroyed. And his life is destroyed because everything he has is tied in to, his career and his accomplishments versus anything beyond that. And I think a little bit of a difference too here is I didn't realize it until later as he's sitting there trying to write his name. And Rachel McAdams' character comes in and talks about his funding or whatever. He's talking about this, that, or the other. He's lost everything. He doesn't have all the money that Tony Stark has to fall back onto. He is a person that as a doctor, through everything that he has done, he's very, he's accomplished a lot, but in the midst of that, he turned around and lived a very expensive life. So the income that he made, he turned around and put it right back into things for himself, from either cars, his apartment, all of his, watches and everything else. You see that, and you see that growth, though, later on where he's literally there. His watch is the only thing left to his name. It gets crushed or whatever else. And he hits that big breaking point where he has nowhere else to go. And it's not like he can go back to what he's used to because his hands are destroyed where he can't use them. But to see, and Ashby mentioned this a little bit earlier, but to see by the end of the movie, his hands still aren't fixed. They're still shaky. They're not, maybe not so much as before, but with all the powers that he has had and all the time he has spent, he, learns so much more to care for the world around him, the dimensions, everything else, and do what's best for, the better good versus I've figured out how to use all these powers. Let me fix myself and get back to that personal gain all over again and buying a bunch of things and doing a bunch of things. So it's subtle in the way it's done some parts throughout the movie, but just to see his, the growth of the character throughout the entire movie makes you really appreciate him and just, be for him by the end of the movie.
What nitpicks did you have with Doctor Strange? The movie, not necessarily the character. Although you could have nitpicks about the character too, I guess.
Sure. How about you, Ashby? What nitpicks do you have?
I feel like I don't really have any nitpicks, but I feel like I have some weird recovered memory about people being upset regarding Tilda Swinton's casting. And some things I dig deep into and some things I just don't. And this was one of the things I didn't. And now I wish I had looked at it so I could be a little bit more well spoken on it.
I can give you some background on that if you need me to.
Okay, because it was confusing to me. The issue seemed to be that it looked like whitewashing casting, where they were putting a white woman in the role of someone who should be a traditionally Asian character played by an Asian actor.
Yes.
And I was under the impression, and they say in the movie, that she has a Celtic origin, that her history is Celtic, and that explains her being racially white while also being steeped in mystical Middle Eastern practices. So I was a little confused about that.
So traditionally in the comics, the Ancient One, or the character that Tilda Swinton is playing, the Ancient One, is a Tibetan character.
Okay.
With the politics behind Tibet and China, Marvel did not want to risk upsetting the box office in China by casting a Tibetan actor or making a statement about that.
Okay.
And I think they wanted to avoid the issue altogether.
Okay.
So they just cast
Nader White.
Well, I wouldn't. That would be a broad way of putting it, but yes.
Right. It just sounds like damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Basically, that's what it was. Like they were in a tough spot, and they just said, you know what, we're going to cast best available actress here. I mean, it's usually a man in the comics too, so they cast a woman. So I guess you could say a little bit of progress here. I guess I don't know.
Right. Okay.
And I felt like Tilda Swinton did a good job in the role.
She did.
It was just that it was a very weird spot for them to be in because, again, if they had cast a Tibetan actor or if they had said the character was Tibetan, then China would probably not have carried this movie in their theaters.
That's so interesting. I did not know anything about the socio-political ramifications of China and Tibet. So now I have something to look into. But
Tibet considers itself a free country and China does not. Like China considers Tibet to be part of China, so there's a big issue there. And that I said, I would consider I would encourage. Like I am not an expert on that. That's a very broad scope of explaining it. So I would encourage you to look into it yourself and get a better understanding from someone who is not me.
Right.
But that
sounds a lot like Russia and the Ukraine, same situation.
Anyway, that's the broad strokes of the situation with the Ancient Ones.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I just feel like we sing Marvel praises so much that when I feel like there is something that I see online that I feel like it's important to at least try to bring up some of the nitpicks I've seen from the greater internet zeitgeist. And that was one of the things that over the years has really stuck with me. But it's been so long since this movie came out, I forgot what their argument was. So really, I don't personally have any nitpicks with this movie. But I think that's because this is one of the few Marvel movies that I can just sit back and enjoy because I don't have a favorite character in it and I don't have a way that I feel the plot should go. I think that there are Marvel movies that we each really have an idea, whether it's from the comics or whether it's from fanon, that we have scenes we want to see and things we want characters to experience or say. And this is just one of those movies that I could care less, and not in a bad way. I just get to sit back and enjoy it and not have to pick it apart because I don't have a dog in the fight in that sense. So
I have a nitpick.
Okay.
And it's the nitpick that, what is Marvel's biggest problem in their movies? It's
got rid of the villain.
It's the villain. It's the villain problem. Mads Mikkelsen did the best he could with what he was given, but Caecilius was not a very compelling villain to me. We knew he was a foot soldier for Dormammu who did not, he played a role in the movie, but he was not the main villain of this movie. He was like he had like a little cameo in there, but he was not the big bad of this movie, and Caecilius just wasn't compelling as a character for me.
Right. Also, I feel like villains who are like, "Oh, I want immortality. I want to live forever." Get in line.
It's a very tired trope, and when you think, and I know there's only but so many things you can do with your villains to make them villains and stuff. There's but that one's just like I said, the motivations were like, oh, okay, that's great, but I don't know. Mads Mikkelsen did a great job with what he had, but Caecilius as a character and knowing that he's not coming back anymore, they killed him off. Good riddance, but overall, this movie was about showcasing Doctor Strange and his abilities. So, I guess you can't showcase every movie can't have a great showcase villain as well. But I would just wish they'd have made Caecilius or whoever the villain would end up being. In the next movie, I hope they make him very interesting and not a, paint by numbers, one note villain character.
I like what you said, and I think it brings a good part to me about Dormammu. Whereas at least with Thanos, when he's just like a conqueror, you've seen Thanos do things. Like, you understand the power that Thanos has. I feel like with Dormammu, we hear about a little bit about what he can do, but we literally don't see him do anything except be a face in the stars. Like, we
Right.
see him kill Doctor Strange over and over, so you get the idea of how powerful he is, but you don't see him do anything that makes you think of any consequences up until that point. And at the point that he does it, other than the very first time he kills Doctor Strange, you don't, and it becomes more comical after that, just because it's over and over and over again. So I just feel like the same way. Like, it didn't ruin it for me. Like, I still enjoyed the movie, and a lot, like Ashby said, for me, I really didn't have a ton of nitpicks because I can just sit back and watch this movie because I have no history or a dog in this fight. It's literally everything I know about this person, you're telling me. So I'm along for the ride as you give it to me. So I did enjoy it. But that does definitely make sense now that you bring that up, Eric. I just feel like they could have done more with it. And, they have another opportunity. We'll see what they do with it. I don't think it ruined it, but I definitely, there is that trend of just a giant big bad that just carries a big name versus giving a lot of backbone to it.
Any unanswered questions about the movie?
We're seeing Rachel McAdams again, right?
I hope so.
It was just
I
couldn't
hope
help.
so.
She's going.
She was delightful.
She was.
And here's a little interesting, I guess, little Easter egg with her character. Her character in the comics is Night Nurse. But also, while this movie was coming out, the Netflix Marvelverse had been coming out, and you had Rosario Dawes playing a different version of Night Nurse in those shows. So her character will return in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I would say 95% sure I remember seeing her being recast as her character. So. But
Gotcha.
Rachel McAdams is one of my favorites. We talked about her a couple weeks ago with Mean Girls. She hit the big trifecta with Mean Girls, Notebook, and Wedding Crashers, all back to back to back. So I'm just glad to see her as part of the MCU for sure. My unanswered question would be, like, can we find like our own little sanctum? Learn magic ourselves. I mean, like this movie had a tall order introducing like actual magic to the MCU and making it just seem normal.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
To the point
like,
where
hey,
to the point
it's
where Doctor
magic,
Strange
cool.
steps out of a portal with Bruce Banner in Infinity War, and Tony starts like, "You selling tickets or something? I mean, don't embarrass me in front of the wizards." I mean,
Yeah.
Remember,
Yeah, that was
and remember, Doctor Strange is a wizard because a sorcerer is a wizard without a hat.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah,
There's about to be a really good argument coming up on Falcon Winter Soldier about wizards versus sorcerers.
he's one of the big three.
That's right. And I guess unanswered questions for me don't have anything to do with like plot or anything. I love magical artifacts. I think they're so fun, and I really love exploring. Like, part of the fun of the Harry Potter books for me is all the like little ancillary things that most people don't think about because they're focused on the plot and the characters, like the magical creatures and the magical artifacts and the spells and like all these little things that go into making a robust world.
Yes.
The same thing. I love the same thing about the Lord of the Rings. Like, you have these like swords that have names, and you have jewelry that's a part of like the eons of life on this planet of the elves that they've passed down from generation to generation of elves. And so you have famous rings and famous necklaces. And I really, like, they opened up this whole world of, you have these relics, right? And the relic chooses you, and they're in the sanctums. They just have rooms of relics. And I'm like, tell me about all of these artifacts. Like, you're just glossing over everything. And there's cases full of these relics. And I just want to know each one of them and what each one does and the history of each one and like how relics work. Like, the cape and the staff and the boots that make him jump around, like they all choose the sorcerer, right? But like once that relic sorcerer dies, like then the relic goes back into a glass case until it chooses another one. Like, I just have so many questions about relics and about the cloak. And None of that was answered.
But it's the same way a lot to me, like the collector that we see. I would love to just walk around and see all the little things that he has in there the same way that it's so much like it reminds me of going on a field trip in Doctor Strange when you're in like a really nice museum and it's like each one of these things is important. There's a lot of these things that are important to people that know things from the comics that we just had no idea about, that were probably shown and we just, right over our heads. The one unanswered question I had, and it's been brought up more recently with WandaVision, is we see in the library there's one missing book that's in the chains and everything else. It's not necessarily like overly focused on, but it's right there in the middle where you can see like there's a book missing. Rumors have speculated that this is the book that we've seen in WandaVision, and it could be, or it could not be. But either way, that was an unanswered question that honestly, seeing this for the first time, I probably wouldn't have thought much about. But given the history and everything else we've experienced since seeing it then and seeing it again, I couldn't help but to focus on that and realize, how much one guy was able to do just by ripping a page or two out of a book versus somebody that has an entire book that they have stolen from this place and what could be in it.
Yeah, Eric will also tell you that there's speculation about that book and how it pertains to certain episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yes, in the 6th later in this episode, actually. Yeah. Any random stories or like little rabbit holes you jumped in while researching this movie that y'all want to share? Anything on Tumblr? I mean, what you got?
I did not have time this week, unfortunately, to bring you guys some Tumblr Doctor Strange stuff. Although there is a lot of that. Before Doctor Strange came along, there was a big focus in fandom between Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. Like they were science bros. They would like get together and bro out over science because they were both like super smart people. And I feel like if anyone has the temperament to withstand Tony other than Pepper, it's Bruce. And so there's a lot of fanon around the friendship between Tony and Bruce, and it is vast and it is infamous, and it is way more than you see on screen, per usual with fandom. But along comes Dr. Stephen Strange, and for whatever reason, fans, and maybe because I think it was Kyle who mentioned previously that there is a little bit more on paper as far as the comic goes with interaction between Tony Stark and Stephen Strange. So you do have a canon in the comics to pull from, to create a relationship or a friendship between them. But especially with what little interaction we get between them in Infinity War, and how delightful, Robert Downey Jr. always is on screen as Tony Stark, and he makes fun of everything. And so, that really ramped fans up into this frenzy of really loving the dynamic between Tony Stark and Stephen Strange. And so there is much, much fan art about that dynamic and how Tony is forever getting on Steven's nerves, and it just all kinds of fun stuff about the cloak being inappropriate with Tony without Steven knowing, and it's hilarious. And I again, I would have brought it all more to you than just me rambling about it, but I haven't had time. But maybe by the time this episode airs on Monday, I'll have some of my famous memes for you that will be Doctor Strange relevant.
Awesome. Your what moment of the movie?
Well, I have one random thing real quick.
Okay.
Not long. It was the same way I was researching or just like watching some YouTube stuff on it. And there's a doctor, I don't remember which country he's from. I believe he was British. I don't remember. But either way, what he does, he's a doctor, but then he does like YouTube videos where he watches clips from movies.
Yeah, I haven't seen him. There's also like a lawyer guy who does it.
Yeah.
For the same reason, just with lawyer stuff.
Yeah, and so he's not necessarily there to pick it apart and like talk crap about it. He's more so just to take these scenes and be like, is this realistic or is this not realistic?
Yes.
And he does a good job too, just being upfront and being like, look, this is also a magical movie, and there's other things beyond that happens that you just kind of take with a grain of salt. But he did say a lot of the scenes, there was a lot of things that were done very well, how things were actually very accurate, even down to some very, minuscule things that shouldn't really matter, but they just stepped above and beyond to include these things to make it even more so real. But he even breaks it down the scene where you see Dr. Stephen Strange in his first surgery getting washed up, getting cleaned up to get ready for surgery. And he kind of broke that down, talked about steps that were correct, steps that weren't correct. And I think there's a few things that he said, weren't quite necessarily correct, because if you did this, you could literally kill somebody. But overall, they did actually do, they got most of it right. They actually put in the effort, which I think we see that a lot with a lot of shows nowadays anyway, because of the internet. We're able to research things and know things. But especially with Marvel, technically, usually there's somebody, it's their job to be like, what would happen in this situation? How do we need to handle this? And it's not just some super random thing to happen. So there's some moments, like you said, that did not, technically wouldn't work health-wise. But overall, Marvel did a really good job of actually portraying what it would be like to be a surgeon.
I would be disappointed if they didn't. I mean,
Sure.
Marvel, for the most part, has done their due diligence on everything, and they usually do a really good job of making sure even the little minute details matter. So I think that's really awesome. While we're talking, what moment, Kyle? What you got? I've got mine. So I mean,
okay, you go ahead.
Okay, Ashby, do you want to go or do you want me to go first?
I'll do mine.
Okay, go ahead.
So I know that we often talk about a what moment as like an up, right? Like oh my gosh, this is happening, But I think sometimes a what moment can be like a down.
Sure.
And I did not go into this movie expecting to come across some kind of like life altering like lesson that would like hit me in the feels and would just really like touch me in a way and like make me stop and really like think about things. And I mean, again, and I forgot the first time, and then watching it again, I remembered that there's a lot of like mystical spiritual things in this movie for obvious reasons, and a lot of it is just kind of like, learn to be in yourself and learn to trust your whatever, and choose your battles and be better as yourself or whatever. Like there's a lot of like woo woo stuff in it. But the moment that the Ancient One knows that she's dying, and she and Steven are out on the balcony in their like non-corporal forms, and they're having a conversation, and I was just kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever, we're moving the plot along. And then at the very end of their conversation, she says, death is what gives life meaning. To know your days are numbered, your time is short. You'd think after all this time I'd be ready, but look at me, stretching one moment out into 1,000 just so I can watch the snow. And I was like, whoa,
So good.
oh my gosh, it just hit me. And I just, it's so poignant to think that, like, here's a being who has lived hundreds, if not thousands of years, and who has made it her mission, to sort of protect things greater than herself, and who has maybe bended her own rules in order to stay alive long enough to protect this earth, this world. And the idea that like in her final moments, even as long as she's lived and as tired as she must be, she's using what magic she has left just to live a few seconds longer to enjoy something as simple as snow. And I that was a really big moment for me in this movie, because it just sort of like took me out of the movie almost for a second, and I was just like, wow, like that is really
Good.
something to think about. So
That
I
is
thought
pretty
it's
good.
not like a super exciting moment, but it was definitely one of my favorite moments and one of my favorite lines from the movie.
See, and when we describe the what moment, I think you can apply your own definition to it as it pertains. I mean, it's a very fluid concept, but for me, it's the most memorable thing. And for me, my what moment this week is not an up moment. Well, it might be depending on how, but it's more of a hilarious moment. Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
Yeah.
I mean, just the hilarity and also the genius behind watching Dr. Stephen Strange get killed over and over and over. Like the first time you see him just rip the part, and you're like, "Oh God, what?"
See,
what?
I think that's my what the what moment is. It's all of a sudden like, well, crap, he's dead, and then all of a sudden he comes over.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
Yes.
And it's like that would be my what the what moment. Just again, and the crazy thing, I don't think about it like too deeply, but when I try to, it's like that was still like really awesome, like and brave of him because. He felt every single time he died.
Oh, sure.
Everything that happened to him, he felt that. I mean, and just because there's a time loop there doesn't erase the pain that he had to felt in the moment. So, but that would be my what the what moment. And Kyle, yours is
it's a split second beforehand,
right before it. So. Good stuff.
Nice.
Good stuff.
Nice.
Do we agree that Doctor Strange won this movie, or do we have any other contenders for the title this week?
No, I think for the first time in a long time, maybe like there's no argument that the main character won the movie.
I would agree with that. All right, Ashby, you want to intro me for the next section?
Is that in the script?
Yeah, I mean we don't have a script, but yeah, this is the every week for the MCU we dive into blah 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 blah.
So the thing is that I in typical me fashion, I don't even have a script up.
Okay, that's fine. If you just want to say, hey, Eric, teach, what
hey,
we're doing.
Eric.
Yeah, what's up?
You know what? This is the portion of our MCU episodes where we teach you a little something about an artifact or an important reoccurring part of the MCU. And Eric is going to talk about that right now.
Yes, I'm going to teach y'all what y'all need to know about the Time Stone.
The more you know.
Ooh.
All right, so
it's green.
Yes, it's green. Yes, that's all we got. It's green, ladies and gentlemen.
It's contained in a gold necklace.
So yeah, he's from space. He's here to steal a necklace from a wizard.
It's the other side of Harry Potter that you didn't know about.
Oh my goodness. The Time Stone is a remnant of one of the 6 singularities which existed for the universe. After the universe came to be, the Big Bang forged the remnants of those 6 singularities into elemental crystals and dubbed the Infinity Stones, and they were hurled across the universe. As indicated by its name, the Time Stone held dominion over the forces of time. The Master Sorcerer, Agamotto, fashioned a containment device to better wield its dangerous power. When Agamotto founded the Master of the Mystic Arts, the usage of the eye became forbidden, though Cagliostro was permitted to study the artifact and eventually wrote how to control the relic in his book. The Masters would subsequently swear an oath to protect the Time Stone with their lives because the Time Stone ultimately became their chief weapon against mystical forces that seek to invade and destroy Earth. We see in Endgame... in 2012, the Ancient One brought the Time Stone with her to New York City as she defended its sanctum from the invading Chitauri warriors. During his training at Kamar-Taj, Dr. Strange began to read the book of Cagliostro and learned of the eye's full power. Seeking to push himself, Strange donned the eye and opened it, revealing the Time Stone, first testing its power on the apple before using to recreate the lost pages from his book. And he was halted by Wong and Carl Mordo, who warned that the eye's power were contrary to the natural order of things, and the slightest misuse could result in an endless temporal loop. Endless temporal loop, you said? Well, we see that used in the Dark Dimension. He traps Dormammu. He's come to bargain that could only be broken by Doctor Strange if Dormammu acquiesced to the humans' bargain. So after that battle, he returned the eye to its resting place in Kamar-Taj soon, where Wong casually revealed, hey, by the way, this is an Infinity Stone. Just a heads up. So, yeah. Bruce Banner, y'all have heard of him. He got thrown out of a ship in space, and he fell in the New York Sanctum. Just great placement there by our friend Heimdall, who sent him hurtling through space. And he was to warn the planet of Thanos' imminent arrival. Doctor Strange and Wong sought out Tony Stark for his aid. He wanted to destroy the Time Stone, Wong told him, no, we're not going to do that. It's going to be our greatest threat against Thanos. Ebony Maw and Cole Obsidian arrived demanding the Time Stone, and they tried to abduct it off of Strange's body, but he revealed he'd placed a spell around the Time Stone so it could be only taken from him if he wished it so. As we'll learn about in Infinity War, Doctor Strange was adamant that he would let anyone die before he gave up the Time Stone, and he used it to view 14.5 million or so futures with the Time Stone, and only found one where they came out victorious. And in the vein of that, he ends up giving up the Time Stone to Thanos. As he said, we're in the endgame now. So he gave it to Thanos, and Thanos knows how to use this Time Stone because he used it to, unkill Vision.
Yeah.
And then plucked it out of his head again, re-killing Vision, which leads to WandaVision. So, yeah. And then a few weeks later, Thanos used the power of the stones, including the Time Stone, to destroy the Time Stone and the rest of the Infinity Stones. So, yeah. The Time Stone played a big part in Endgame. There was a big time heist where they would go through the Quantum Realm to, recapture the Time Stone so they could use the Infinity Gauntlet to bring back everybody from the snap. And then Captain America returned the Time Stone from where he found it and, didn't do anything else that was out of the ordinary that Ashby won't be mad about in that movie. The capabilities of the Time Stone, as we talked about, is among the most powerful artifacts in all existence. It can only be held by beings of exceptional superhuman ability. When contained in the vessel such as the Eye or the Infinity Gauntlet, the stone's power manifests as green runes of energy surrounding the user's arm and wrist. Manipulation of time then occurs primarily through the conjuration of a green circular mandala of energy in the user's hand. And we probably will not see the Time Stone anymore in the MCU since, it's been destroyed. But who knows? They're going through time, little spaces in time and space, and who knows what'll show up. So we may not have seen the Time Stone the last of the Time Stone after all. So a little trivia about the Time Stone in the comics. The orange time gem manipulates time. But it was recreated to be green in the 2015 Secret Wars comic art, so it would match the color that it's depicted in the films. So
Nice.
Cool. So at this point, we're towards the end of the episode. We usually have 6 fun facts and observations for you, the fans. One for each of the Infinity Stones, like the Time Stone we just mentioned. I know it's strange. Well, actually, it's Doctor. Actually, it's Doctor. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's strange. I mean, who am I to judge? But we are going to do 6 fun facts and observations for you, starting with Kyle. Name one of your facts here. Go.
Sure. Actor Jaquan Phoenix was the first choice.
Joaquin.
I don't know why I said Jaquan. It's like I literally said it in my head 4 times before I said it. Joaquin Phoenix.
Fair. He uses a J. I mean, who uses the J for the WA sound? I mean, come on.
Well, he's Joaquin Phoenix for now. Was the first choice to portray Doctor Strange. They actually went months negotiating with him, and I guess his managers, everything else. But I think money-wise ended up falling out. Producers then went after, or at least considered, Johnny Depp and Jared Leto to play the role. And then they finally, went with Benedict Cumberbatch and were hesitant because they didn't know if he was a big enough actor at that point. It kind of extends off of what we'd said earlier. I always take these in a little bit and just kind of think about those and think what it would have been like with any of those other actors. And once again, I think they would have done a good job, but I don't know if it would have done as well as what he did.
All right, Ashby, number 2. Or I can do number 2 if you want me to.
Yeah, you go first.
All right, I'll let you do number 3. So there have been references to Doctor Strange in earlier MCU films. First in Thor 2011, the Orb of Agamotto, which rests in Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum, can be seen among the treasures in Odin's treasure chamber. Another reference to Doctor Strange can be seen in Thor: The Dark World. The Crossroads is one of the many phrases written on Eric Selvig's chalkboard. The Crossroads is an other dimensional reality that has a noticeable role in the Doctor Strange comics. And then, of course, the most famous one is in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, when they, let's see, what's the word I want to use? They rough up Jasper Sitwell for information, and they ask, what kind of, information they have on, people, and he says anyone who could be a future threat to Hydra. He includes notable names like Bruce Banner and Stephen Strange, who was not yet he was just a surgeon at that point. Possibly. We don't know. The timeline's a little murky on that. Another possible reference to other MCU films in this movie, when Doctor Strange is in his wreck, he was on the phone talking to someone about a possible medical case to take on. And they mentioned a 35-year-old Air Force colonel whose spine was crushed in experimental armor. And some people think that's a reference to James Rhodes, Rhodey. But
after Civil War.
After Civil War. But again, the timeline does not exactly match up with that, because that moment takes place before Civil War. So some people are theorizing that it's actually the person seen in Iron Man 2 with Justin Hammer's experimental armor, where it fails and Justin Hammer has to get up at the... No, he survived. He's okay. He survived. And they think the timeline might even stretch that far out to where Doctor Strange had his accident that early, and then all the other time, gets us up to present time because he spent so much time in Kamar-Taj. Yeah, Kamar-Taj, and learning all the ways of the mystic arts. So there's your number 2. Number 3.
So due to the popularity of the Marvel films, obviously we're into phase 3, Rachel McAdams decided that she would, thank you, like to be in a Marvel movie. Unknowingly, she was the first choice for the role of Christine, and she accepted it. But she was also previously approached by Jon Favreau as his first choice to play Pepper Potts in 2008 Iron Man, which she declined at the time. And no offense to Rachel McAdams, but, if you can't handle me at my phase 1, then I don't think you deserve me at my phase 3, but whatever.
Rachel McAdams can do what she wants. She was in Mean Girls.
That's true.
She got hit by a bus.
On Wednesdays, she wears pink. Okay. Number 4.
This one goes back a little bit more to his origin in the comics, but originally he was going to be called Mr. Strange. But then there was some concerns that was too similar to Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four. So for that reason, Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, when they moved forward, then decided last minute to call him Doctor Strange. But even that was problematic because at one point there was a villain called Doctor Strange that had appeared in an issue of The Amazing Spider-Man. To get around that issue, they spelled it out Doctor, Doctor, instead of Dr. period. So that's how they said that's a different person. But
I thought it was Mr. Doctor.
Actually, it's Strange. Could be.
Well,
Who
maybe. Who am I to judge?
Yeah. Number 5. So I'm putting my phone down. I'm doing this from memory, but Ashby alluded to it earlier. In season 4 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., there is that season is the best season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., by the way. And they one of the reasons is they split up the season into 3 pods of episodes. So you have the first 7 or 8 episodes with one main story, the second set of episodes in another story, and the third set in another story, with the last 2 episodes tying it all together. And that format worked really well for that show. In the first pod, it's based on Ghost Rider. This is Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider, not your Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider, played by Gabriel Luna. Fantastic job by him, by the way. But there's a artifact that's being sought after by Robbie Reyes' uncle in the first few episodes of this season called the Darkhold. And it has so many... I mean, that's really hard to explain how they present it in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but it's basically an evil book with some evil things going on in it. During this part of, and I'm just spoiling Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because we gave you a spoiler warning an hour ago. During this part of the episodes, there is a android created called Ada. at the end of this arc, Robbie Reyes is, doing his own thing in another dimension as Ghost Rider. Ada has hold of the Darkhold, uses it to recreate lifelike figure androids, and then uses it to create something called the Framework, where she's trapping real people into an alternate virtual reality. At the end of the season, Robbie Reyes makes his return as Ghost Rider, defeats Ada, and then takes the Darkhold, and very interesting, swings his chain in a circle, which looks very similar, if not identically similar, to the sling rings that Doctor Strange uses to create a portal to another area, and he takes the Darkhold with him. And I know the Darkhold was mentioned in the TV show Marvel's Runaways. I never saw it, so I can't give you any information about that, but the Darkhold does get a mention. Spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen WandaVision, but again, you were warned. It was
Agatha all along.
It does get a huge mention in the last 2 episodes of WandaVision, where she is seen reading it. There's a mysterious book in her dungeon, and in episode 9, she is explicitly mentions it's called the Darkhold. It's called the Book of the Damned, and it looks noticeably different than the one you've seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which just breaks my brain trying to think, how am I going to explain that this is the exact same book as the one as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? I'm going to insist that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. will remain canon until they give me a reason not to.
It is. It has to be. Look, Marvel, they're going to have to own up to it, okay? They can't do everything perfectly.
Don't take my Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. canosity away from me.
They also can't just retcon 8 seasons of TV. You did that, okay?
It was 7, but yeah, still.
Before we jump to number 6.
But also, what if the Darkhold is what if it's a sentient book? What if it can change what it looks like?
That's a theory I saw.
There could be an explanation.
That's a theory I saw.
Yeah.
So
before we jump to number 6, I was cleaning today or packing, and I told Alexa, I said, "Hey Alexa, play Disney songs," and she was playing her Disney songs, and we went from I don't remember the exact song, but we'll just say Beauty and the Beast to it was Agatha all along. She has now made the Disney music canon.
That's hilarious.
So it's
as she deserves.
And also on that same line, I sent Ashby a tweet, I shared it with her earlier this week, where a sports radio group called Sports Channel 8 did a parody of that song, talking about the ACC basketball championship last week. Who is the best team in the ACC? It was Georgia Tech all along, and it was really
pretty good.
It was really well done. They posted the coach's face with his face shield on top of Agatha, and it was talks about his hair. His hair is the frizziest, frizzy.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, number 6. Number 6.
So I didn't mean for both of these to be about Rachel McAdams, but here we are.
She's
Rachel
a queen.
McAdams, yeah, her startled reaction in the broom closet when Strange disappears back through the portal was genuine, because the mop handle fell completely by accident while they were filming that scene, and it scared McAdams almost out of her skin, and so she has that reaction on camera, and Scott Dickerson, the director, decided to keep it because in having the reaction she never broke character, and so they kept it in the final film.
Nice.
I love it. We got some social media shout outs this week.
Yes sir, we do. This past week we didn't have a ton because the same day that we originally were going to record this podcast,
we had a threat.
Yes, there were major threats of giant tornadoes coming, and thankfully where we're located we didn't really get hit at all.
It's because I watch Twister. Anytime we're going to have tornadoes and I watch Twister, I ward them away.
I'm just thankful the rain shield and the storm shield that I put over Johnson County.
Yes,
worked.
we appreciate it.
Yes.
But with that, whenever something like that happens around here, all of our social media attention to things like that go, to more responsible things. But some of you did jump in. Amanda Newport said this movie is trippy AF, but I liked it a lot. James Nichols says it was a good character. Let me jump over here real quick. Loading. Get that Facebook loading.
It was Facebook all along.
I've been working on my evil cackle for Halloween this year. I'm going to be Agatha.
Nice.
I want to be Vision, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
I feel like for Halloween we got to do themed costumes. I mean, just saying. Because
For
by
sure,
that
for
point,
sure.
we'll be able to celebrate Halloween together in your new house.
Sure.
Halloween parties. Yes.
Cal can be Fietra.
That was literally who I was going to pick. It's like, I can pull that off.
I won't be Vision as the lucha wrestler he dressed up as for Halloween.
There you go. There you go.
And then Robin Stauffer, I think it's
Stauffer, yes.
Stauffer. Nice.
She works with your mom.
Okay, awesome.
She's the art teacher at Glendale Kinley.
Cool.
Good friend.
She also likes
I'm
Bob's
sorry,
Burgers.
that would be Ann Weaver.
Yeah.
Ann Weaver
That's
was
the
the
only
art
person
teacher
that works
there
there.
10 years ago, my first year. She retired after working with me for 1 year. So
I don't try.
sorry about that.
I reject that reality. And
I don't
accept
believe
my
you.
own.
You never worked there. Mr. Holly was the PE teacher, and he still is. You've never worked at Glendale Kinley. My Aunt June still
you only
teaches.
think you did because I programmed you to think so.
Yes, my Aunt June still teaches the music there. No, she wasn't there. It was some other lady.
No, she was there.
When I was a kid.
No, she was in
That's
the
what
middle
I'm
school.
trying to say.
You're thinking of Judy Daniels.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, back to this. Robin says he's one of my favorites. So see, I told you earlier that, somebody out there, it was one of their favorites. And that's who it was. And that's it for the week. We had another question about powers and such. I think Hunter replied.
Yeah, that's a good question, though. I know it's late. We're doing this on a Saturday night, and, but good question to go out on. What magical ability would you want?
What ability would I want?
Magical ability?
We posted online this week because this was on the day of the storm, so it really didn't get much love. But, Doctor Strange introduces magic to the MCU in this movie. So if we were able to choose a magical power, what magical power would you want to be able to do?
I know mine. It
Okay.
would be the ability to open up a portal and go anywhere I would want to instantly.
That's good.
Like if we're
Yeah,
doing,
I love traveling.
like
so-
I love traveling. I don't love the act of traveling, but I love doing it. Like getting to a new place and exploring it. So if I
Right.
want to go to Italy, you know what? Let me do this little sling ring here. Let's
Open
go
up
to,
a portal.
Let's go to Italy. All right.
Yeah.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, it's amore. Yep.
You're going to
Yeah,
need Harry
there's
Potter's
a-
invisibility
There's
cloak,
a
though.
really good restaurant like right at the foot of the Eiffel Tower, and I hate the idea of like having to go through the rigmarole of traveling to France, but if I could just pop over to that restaurant on like a Saturday night and have some French onion soup and a glass of wine and then just
Like,
pop back into my house.
yeah, that would be. I mean, one of my favorite international places to go is a place in Johannesburg, South Africa, called the Mug and Bean. Apparently, they have great coffee. I don't know. I don't drink coffee, but they have a wonderful breakfast, and their hot chocolate is to die for. So,
Well, you said moon hits your eye. All I could think about was a big pizza pie from New York, where I would just go to New York,
yep,
grab a pizza, and come back home.
yep.
Yeah. Although I will say, if it wasn't that, I've always been fascinated with the idea of controlling water. And I guess, magically you get into the realm of like being Aquaman or whatever.
Sure.
But like, if we can pick any magic and like any, magic dealing with a natural element, just the idea of being able to breathe underwater and the idea of being able to control water. I've always been a big water baby. Like I grew up with a pool in my backyard. And so I could swim from a very young age, and it was hard for my parents to keep me out of bodies of water. And so I feel like I've always loved the water
I
in
like
whatever form.
I like to think of these powers in ring form, like in Captain Planet.
Yes,
So, like you said, like
Yes.
controlling water. Like, okay, water.
I totally thought.
Yeah,
that's
I
where my
would
brain went.
definitely have the water ring for sure.
Cool.
I think mine, and it's funny because if I ever watched superheroes growing up or anything, it was not a character I cared for. But I would love to be able to control things with my mind, not control people, but just be able to move things and make them work without me having to physically do it. Part of that makes me just sound really lazy. But the other side of it is just like, how cool would it be to be able to work on things without you doing multiple things at the same time, but like to control things with your mind. But when like I go back and watch X-Men, for instance, Professor Xavier was not my favorite character. Jean Grey was not my favorite character. It was more so the action people, that could fly or shoot lasers or have claws that come out of their
Gambit.
hands.
Yeah, Gambit. Yeah,
Kinetic energy.
he
He
can use a card and hurt somebody. It's awesome.
Yeah, my first answer always was, I wish I could fly. Like, I just would love to fly, but I don't know, because do I need to fly if I could spin a circle and just jump wherever I wanted to go?
Like with flying, I have the question, like, does it take the same amount of energy as it does to run? Because if so, then I'm out on flying.
That's a good point. I've never thought about it that way.
Well, and also I'm afraid of heights, and so the idea that I would suddenly lose my ability halfway through flight is terrifying to me. Like, flight would be wasted on me because I'm not too scared.
I'm not battling birds and planes and whatever's up there.
That's
I'm
true.
sorry. I mean, give me the sling ring. Let's go. Let's just step in the portal. Okay, hey, we're in Italy again.
Right.
Since we're talking about it, I will go and include Hunter had said that he would choose invisibility or shapeshifter. I remember my cop-out answer used to always be, I'd want to be Morph from the X-Men, because he could morph into anybody and have their powers, so it was kind of like cheating, but
yes,
he didn't really make it much more than that.
That one episode.
Yes. And then later, years back, he came out with really dark eyes, like he'd been doing heroin.
Yes. All right. Well,
on that great
note, you, the listener, we thank you for joining us today. We want to thank Ricky Lyles for his contributions to the podcast, and maybe even his future contributions with Ricky's Rants. We'll see how that goes. If that ever sees the light of day, we'll see. But thank you for joining us. Make sure you share it with your friends and on social media. Next week, we are discussing what we are calling the what moments from our childhood. No, we're not. No, we said we were not going to do that.
We changed it.
We changed it right before
the
episode.
That's coming in the future.
That's coming in the future. JK, we're actually talking about our top or our favorite TV
theme songs.
TV show theme songs.
Yeah.
Those.
So,
including cartoons.
Including cartoons. So come and knock on our door. We'll be ready for you. Nice.
Whatever happened to dependability?
It's predictability. But yes,
it was the milkman and the paperboy and evening TV.
Oh, and it is evening TV. I always thought it was even TV, even TV.
Evening TV. The funny thing is, me, Kyle, and Ricky last year during quarantine filmed some random stuff, and we put together an actual theme song to the Full House. Theme.
You did. It was great.
Yeah. You did. So good. You put in the work. So, you take that glory. You put in the work.
That's right.
You take that W.
So once we're all vaccinated and we can all be in the same room, we might do something similar with a different theme song. Who knows? So
it's been Agatha all along.
Does that count?
I just figured we were going to walk around your neighborhood just singing about Duckburg, but that works too.
So yeah, next week our favorite TV theme songs. I'm definitely going to sing some. So come ready for that. And then our next entry into the MCU running the Infinity Gauntlet will be next month, where Hunter Batten, who joined us on our first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, he will join us again next month for the second Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. As we discussed.
He doesn't know it yet.
He doesn't know it yet, but he will. Even if we have to get him on the Facebooks like we have Ashby and just have Ashby in person.
That's right.
Point, we're going to make it happen.
I mean, I guess he'll know it when he listens to this episode.
I'm assuming he'll listen to it, right, Hunter?
And while you're listening.
Oh, and hang on. While he's listening, I meant to do this 3 episodes ago. I need to have a personal apology to Hunter Batten. I made the insinuation that he was a big fan of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. And that was a false allegation, and I regret my error. He is not a fan.
Yeah, we almost lost him as a top fan. So
we probably have.
Definitely need to apologize.
So,
he probably listened to the last 2 episodes. Like he's going to apologize.
This is my public apology at the very end of this episode. It's like putting a correction in a newspaper on the bottom of page 12.
That's right.
But here it is, Hunter. I'm sorry. You were not a fan of Rise of Skywalker. I have no idea why I said that. So.
Fast. Sorry, I'm jumping all on you. If you have a favorite TV show theme song, be sure to let us know, because we would love to have you call in and leave us a message on the what line, letting us know what your top choices are. Now back to you, Eric.
Yeah, I think at this point the what line is it's here to stay.
It's here to stay.
Yeah. We hope that everyone can get used to calling in. Maybe at some point we can get a Google number for our Google account, so that we don't have to keep using Kyle's personal cell phone.
Folks, if you want that to happen, share this with your friends so we can get a lot more listeners. So that,
right.
We can justify stuff like that. So
we want to have so many listeners that Kyle no longer feels confident giving out his personal cell number.
Yes.
And that takes a lot because I get a lot of random phone
a lot
calls.
of a lot of random phone calls. So thanks for joining us, folks. As always, stay as cool as the other side of the pillow. And we will see you next week on the What podcast.
Bye.
You stole her line.
It was Eric all along. And we killed the podcast too.